Hey everyone, this is Natalie from the NDA Alumni team. I'm here today with Gina Edwards, who is one of our 2013-14 Boston alums, and she's here today to talk about a couple of questions related to professional life during and also after your AmeriCorps experience. So welcome, Gina. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
So Gina, why don't you first tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we can get into these 4 questions that you have prepared.
Sure. So I did 2 years of AmeriCorps. The first year I did down in Florida with a different program called Literacy AmeriCorps of Palm Beach County. And then last year I came up to Boston and did Notre Dame AmeriCorps here. And so I worked at an organization called Jewish Vocational Service, and there I was primarily an ESOL instructor, but I also did some career coaching and some different things like that. And so after my year of service was over, I actually was hired on full-time at JVS, so I'm here to kind of answer a few questions that you guys might be dealing with.
Great. Well, first of all, congrats on getting hired by your partnering site. That happens a lot with our members and alums, which is really awesome.
Yes.
Cool. Okay, so you have 4 sort of questions/problems. Let me just pull them up here. Yep. 2 of them kind of relate to both members and alums, and then 2 are a little bit more about transitioning from member to alum. So the first one you have is, I've got 2 or more bosses and I don't know who or how to report to both. That's definitely a question I think a lot of our members have and they struggle with. So why don't you take that question on?
Okay. So last year when I worked at JVS, I kind of dealt with this situation firsthand because I was working across a couple different departments, as I imagine a lot of you might be doing as well. So based on that experience that I had, I found that really the most key thing in this situation is your communication with both of these bosses. And especially if this can happen at the beginning of your service, that can really cut down on a lot of any potential bumps in the road that you might find. So my suggestion here is if you have a list of your job responsibilities that you have in your service, either given to you by your supervisors at the beginning or one that you make yourself, I would just kind of make a list of those responsibilities and figure out, which pieces are you having trouble with knowing who to go to, who to report to, who to talk to. So once you kind of develop that list, I would suggest trying to call a meeting with all or some of your bosses, depending on how many you might have, and just kind of going through each of those responsibilities that you're not sure about and just talking about what the best process is for communicating about those things. Something I found along the way is that different managers or different supervisors often have very different communication styles. Some people are all about the emails, some people want to text you, some people want to have just phone conversations. So I think that's another important thing too, is figuring out for each supervisor, each manager, how do you like to communicate, what's the best way to get in touch with you, and then from there you can kind of break it down a little bit further. I think that can kind of open up a really good conversation about, any problems you've encountered so far and how to kind of proceed from here on out with a little bit better communication strategy.
That's great. That's really awesome advice. I think also kind of a theme I picked up on is it's sort of up to the member or the alum to sort of make that first step and say, okay, I'm a little confused. Yes. Let's kind of lay all this out. And I think, what happens with a lot of these AmeriCorps positions is that they have a lot of responsibility and they're kind of wearing many hats, and so it's sort of up to them to delineate which kind of responsibilities go where and who they need to talk to about which ones.
Yeah,
so that's awesome.
Exactly. And you can't really expect that your supervisors are even aware of your confusion if you don't voice it yourself. So I think that's why, for me, communicating is the most key there.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah, I think that's definitely a life lesson. Communication is key.
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, that's great. Thanks so much for that that professional tip and advice. So the next question is, which is related, I don't like the job responsibilities of my service, or similarly, I feel like I'm being overworked or I'm bored. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. So obviously this is kind of like a multi-part question that can differ depending on what your situation is.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I'm a very list-oriented person, so I think starting there is always a good place.
Mm-hmm.
So if you kind of have your job responsibilities there in front of you, you can kind of start looking at this a little bit more concretely. But before we kind of dive in there, I think a point to kind of keep in the backdrop of all of this is that you know, service sometimes is not always what you want it to be. It's sometimes more about the experience itself. So I think that, you know, you have to kind of keep your expectations at a reasonable level because sometimes it's not going to be your dream job. It's not going to be like everything that you love, and not all parts of your job are going to be the most exciting things ever. So I think kind of just keeping that in the backdrop can really help. But once you kind of have that set up, you know, take a look at your job responsibilities and try to figure out why it is that you don't like them. Is it because, you know, are you bored in some way? Do you just not like the kind of task that it is? Do you feel like you're not fully qualified or prepared to do the jobs that you're being asked to do?
Mm-hmm.
So I think first just trying to figure out why is it that you are not enjoying each specific responsibility. And then from there, try to just think about ways that you can try to problem solve or think about how to improve those responsibilities in such a way that make them better for you. So for example, if, you know, a lot of nonprofits sometimes, depending on their level of technology in the office, might be using a very old school method of keeping track of data or something like that. So if you're finding yourself just pushing paper all the time, maybe think about how you could develop a new system that is a little more streamlined, a little more technological,
Mm-hmm.
something like that. Or, you know, if you're feeling overwhelmed in your classroom, if you're teaching a class and you feel like you need a volunteer or need someone to assist you, you know, be that person to reach out to your supervisors and say, hey, you know, I've got this problem going on, but here's a couple ideas I had on how to solve it.
Mm-hmm.
I think anytime that you're running into bumps like that in the road, it's really good when you come to your supervisor, come to your manager with at least a few ideas on how to improve it. I think that shows that you've kind of been a little more thoughtful about it. So I think that that can really help if you are struggling with like particular responsibilities on like how to kind of fix it.
Yeah,
So
I think it's sort of, oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, it's fine.
I think it's sort of like a balance between, you know, kind of accepting and understanding that there are parts of every job that are frustrating and or maybe not the most rewarding or exciting or stimulating. But, you know, as you said, you know, going to your supervisor or your manager, having that initiative and taking that step, but doing it in a way where, like you said before about communicating, you really kind of begin a dialogue rather than saying, you know, this isn't working for me and these are the reasons why, and so I'm going to do this instead because your system is old or outdated. You know, these are all thoughts you might have, but it's about figuring out a way to really you know, begin a discussion with them about like, what can I do while I'm here to kind of assist you in this? I mean, do you see this as also kind of an area that we could improve upon? And these are the suggestions I have.
Exactly. I think, and in that way you really come across as a team player because you're looking at the situation and trying to build a better framework as opposed to saying, you know, I don't want to do this or I don't like this part of my job. So that can only like really help you like in your professional growth and like the way that people see you in the workplace, I think.
Great. Awesome.
Yes.
All right. So the second two questions we have are a little more about transitioning from member to alum and also just kind of after a year, the very large question of life after AmeriCorps and kind of making those steps. So you have two questions here. I'm going to read them both and let you decide which one to sort of tackle first.
Sure.
So the first one is, I don't know what I'm doing after AmeriCorps, which I think is the case for almost every member and starts to set in around this time, I would say.
Right.
So really start to get a little nervous, think about their future. And then the other question is, I don't know how to present my AmeriCorps experience to future employers.
Okay.
Also a great question.
Yes. So I'll start with the I don't know what I'm doing after AmeriCorps, since that is a question that I myself have struggled with before. So I feel like every person gets drawn to AmeriCorps for different reasons. So, you may have just graduated college and you're deciding to do it next, or you just need, you found AmeriCorps through a different path. So I think, this question, depending on where you're at in life and what kind of led you to this place of being at AmeriCorps right now, you might have different questions or different avenues to kind of explore. So I just kind of have some general advice for exploration no matter where you're at. I always see AmeriCorps as a year that you can meet people, grow professionally, and gain experience. So that's, across the board. But depending on where you are, you might have different opportunities right at your fingertips. So, for example, if you're in a big city like myself, it's really easy to kind of tap into a lot of the resources and things that are going on in that city to try to figure out, what you're into. So there's normally a lot of free cultural events or seminars, things that you can do to kind of look a little bit deeper into what you want to do next, as well as if you are near any colleges or universities, I think it's always a good idea to try to drop in on any lectures that are going on, or even contacting a university about sitting in on a class. You may have come out of your undergraduate and you know that you want to stay in that field, but maybe AmeriCorps has showed you that you want to take a different path, or you want to go back to what you did in your undergrad. So I think it's just kind of a matter of soul searching a little bit and figuring out, where it is that you wanna explore further and kind of following that path. So as far as getting out in the city and doing that can be a really good way to kind of find that out. Another thing that I was really lucky is that I had some really amazing AmeriCorps supervisors and site directors who could kind of guide me. So I just spent a lot of times in meetings being like, hey, here's what I've done, here's what I'm kind of interested in, what do you think? Who do you think I should talk to? Mm-hmm. Who's a good resource? And, AmeriCorps is great because it opens you up to so many different kinds of people and networks, whether that be within your site, within NDA, meeting people at mid-year, connecting with people in that respect. So I think, honestly, the more people that you can talk to, the more people you can ask questions, the more, different things you can attend to kind of just see what's out there, that can help kind of try to guide your experience to the next step.
Great. That's awesome. Yeah, I think that's a good point also about sort of finding those mentors, those people that you can kind of have those longer discussions with, where you're kind of figuring out where you really stand and what you're kind of interested in, and getting their opinion. I certainly have found that is how I've figured out where to go with my next steps in life, and I think that's definitely site supervisors and site directors really help with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think in my first year of AmeriCorps, one of our site directors was very interested in a lot of career planning and things like that. So we actually did a lot of different personality assessments and things like that. And through those experiences, we found a lot of really good books. I like the What Color Is Your Parachute, and then there's another one called Do What You Are, that have both been really helpful to me in kind of just investigating, researching other options. So if you're looking for a book or something that could maybe guide your search as well, I would suggest those two.
Great. And then also just for alums to know, the alumni LinkedIn page also has a lot of resources, and we tend to post both job postings, but then also ways to sort of figure out what you want to do, and kind of how to think about that, how to go through that process of figuring it out. So if you go to LinkedIn, if you have LinkedIn, you can search for the group Notre Dame Mission Volunteer Alumni. You have to request to join, but we accept all alums, so definitely do that, and you'll see kind of a slew of resources over the past 2 years.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
All right. So now I'll kind of hop over to the other question, which was how to present your AmeriCorps experience. Mm-hmm. So I think overall, no matter what employer you're really headed towards, AmeriCorps can be a really, really positive and attractive thing on your resume, granted that you make sure that you present it in the right way. So I think, first thing is to kind of think about what kind of employers are you headed towards. generally, in my experience, people from or nonprofit professionals, government professionals often have an understanding of AmeriCorps in general, so you don't have to kind of dive as deep into what it is. But if you're kind of veering off and doing something that's completely different, you might have to spend a little bit more time, whether on your resume or in an interview, explaining the whole AmeriCorps experience. So I think the first thing is kind of try to think about where you're going next, and then think about how deeply you want to explain that in your resume, cover letter, interview. Practicing, very briefly talking about your service is really good. So they always talk about elevator speeches, so you should be able to talk about your AmeriCorps experience in about 30 seconds. So, I think it's always a good exercise to kind of spend some time writing down what your experience has been and then condensing it into something that's very easy for other people to listen to and understand. So I think that would be the biggest thing, is just making sure that you present AmeriCorps as well as a thoughtful step in your career path. So like I said before, some people, I think they leave undergrad and then AmeriCorps is kind of a natural next step towards wherever they're headed. For some people, it might be something, that they needed some time to kind of explore and figure out what they wanted to do next. And I think no matter what your reason, it's fine as long as you present it in a way that is showing that you were thoughtful about it. I think that sometimes it can come across as, something you fell into, or, oh, I wasn't sure what to do, so I did this. And so I think you just want to avoid presenting it in that way, because it is a very meaningful experience, and it has transferable skills across any job realm. So even if you worked in education through AmeriCorps and then you're moving to the business world, there's still lots of skills that you have learned in your AmeriCorps experience that will definitely transfer. So just focus on whatever those skills are, and then try to tailor that to wherever you're going next.
I think that's great advice, and I would say to sort of add to that, there are a lot of websites that just kind of list skill sets, and so you would think that with sort of a job application, they're going to say what kind of skills you need to have. So look at those, as Gina was saying, and kind of pinpoint which of those you really can highlight from your experience. What are those that are transferable, as she says, and you want to make sure you got that language, those like keywords that they use. And there are a lot of websites online that kind of just give you skills assessment lists, and so they say, if you did teaching, what kind of leadership skills you have, what kind of time management or classroom management. I mean, there are a lot of words that you might not realize that you actually can say, oh, I have these skills.
Absolutely.
It's always good, I think, to look at those kind of lists online and figure out what those are, and make sure you put those in your bullet points on your resume.
Exactly.
Awesome. Gina, this was wonderful. Thank you so much. I don't know if you have anything else you want to add, but I think this will be really wonderful for our members and alums to hear. It's definitely going to get passed around, so thank you so much.
Oh, thank you guys. And if you have any other questions, Natalie has my contact information that she can share with you guys. So if you have any follow-up, more specific questions that you want to throw my way, I'm happy to answer them. So I'm looking forward to meeting some of you at mid-year, hopefully, and have a good rest of your year of service.
Thanks so much, Gina. Have a good rest of your day.
No problem. You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.